So this world, including me and you, are created as causes and conditions. There are these endless causes and conditions that are all interacting, and out of that arises me and you and this world and all that we exist, all that exists and all that doesn't exist. So a good analogy is you can think of causes as rocks being dropped into a pond, and then conditions are the ripples that are created every time a rock is dropped. There's ripples that go out, and as you drop more rocks, more ripples are created, and then these ripples that are already existing now interact with each other, and sometimes they're opposing forces. You drop one rock here and drop one rock on the other side, and the ripples come out and they hit each other and almost sometimes cancel each other out. Other times, a rock gets dropped down once, and another rock gets dropped down in the same place, and then those ripples have an additive effect and become big waves. So this is happening on a infinite scale. So when we start to see that, it can feel quite overwhelming. It's like, oh, wait a minute, it's hopeless. There's nothing I can do to control all of these causes and conditions that are happening, because these ripples are coming out and then knocking off some more rocks, and then those rocks are falling in because of those ripples, and it's creating even more ripples, which are then knocking other rocks, and oh my goodness, I just can't handle it. It's hopeless. So that's one way that people come to terms with causes and conditions. They just throw up their hands and they say, oh, that's just how it is. And that in itself becomes another rock that is dropped. The rock of hopelessness. And then that creates certain ripples and conditions, which in turn trigger more rocks to fall. So while we can't control this world, we can't even control our bodies, really. Just, if you don't believe me, just try holding your breath for an hour. Eventually you'll inhale, and I don't mean like using some external thing to keep yourself from breathing, because you'll die. But if you just try to sit there and hold your breath, eventually you won't be able to. The same with your internal processes that are happening. Your body just was created with causes and conditions, and because you eat something, and then all of a sudden this whole digestive process happens where you start salivating, then that saliva helps start to digest food, it goes into your stomach, things get churned up, enzymes come into play, goes through intestines that extract nutrients and push through waste, and you have this whole cycle that happens, and out of that cycle different things are then triggered. Now the body has fuel for building cells and maybe energy, and that energy can come fast or slow. You have some sugar and it's like instant energy. You have some protein and there's energy there, but it's a little slow build. So now we start to see that, oh, well, there is a way to influence things then. Maybe I can't control my body's digestive process, but I can influence it. If I need a quick burst of energy, I can eat some sugar. I'll get that quick burst, but then the crash is going to come when it wears off. If I have some protein, then that's a more sustaining energy, not quite as fast, but it's there. So that's happening just on a, physical molecular level. There's also this whole part of our being that's energetic, that's the energy body. And then there's these mental processes that are happening, and there's emotional processes that are happening. And then all of this is occurring in this vast ocean of samsara, this vast ocean of experience, of this beginningless ocean of causes and conditions. So all of this is just churning and churning. There's different whirlpools that we can get sucked into. There's different places where it just seems calm, and maybe we might get bored. We enter what I call the doldrums, where we're just kind of stuck there. We don't seem to be moving at all. Nothing seems to be changing. It's just this flat. And oftentimes, when we're in one place, we're caught up in the whirlpool, and we're like wishing that we were in the doldrums, and then when we're in the doldrums, we're wishing we were in the whirlpool. And so we have that whole level going on, which we can't control all of that. Life is going to continue to unfold according to the previous causes and conditions. What's happening now is already happening. Can't stop it. But we can influence, and we can certainly change how we interact with something going forward. How we've already had a reaction to something we can't change. That's already happened. It's in the past. So what we can do is feed the algorithm of our life. If you've been on social media at all, there's the talk of the algorithm. And it's such a wonderful metaphor for our interactions with life. Because if you're on social media and you interact with a certain type of content, the algorithm, the programming behind that social media platform will notice and say, oh, that's what you want more of, because you're interacting with it. Social media is an attention economy. It's all about what you put your attention on, because then they can feed you advertisements. And those advertisers will pay them, so they make money. But because of the nature of how social media is, it's all of us together posting content. It's not just ads, right? Because nobody would go on it. So there's this algorithm that's constantly trying to get your attention. So when you interact with content, even if it's something that you're completely put off by, the shock value of like, oh, this is tragic, this is horrible. But there you are, you click on the photo, and then you start to comment, you write little comments. Maybe you share it with other people and say, oh, isn't this tragic? But the algorithm is only seeing in terms of attention. It says, oh, you put attention on this, therefore you want more of it. So now your social media feed gets filled with more content that has a similar flavor. And this is how it works, and I think most people understand at some level that's how it works. Not, see sometimes people start complaining about how their feed is flooded with all this horrible things, and somebody will point out to them, well, that's how it works. You focus on these horrible things, you get more horrible things. You focus on cat videos, which I highly recommend. I love cat videos. I'm a cat video worshiper. And then, of course, you'll start getting advertisements for cat food and litter boxes and things because, the platform's going to make money, right? But my feed is filled with lots of cat videos because of that. It's a very happy place. This also translates to our day-to-day life off of social media. And just like when we're on social media, if we've been interacting with really heavy, tragic content, and then we're like, okay, I need to change. I can't deal with this anymore. So, okay, I'm going to start clicking on the cat videos. I'm going to start looking for pretty pictures of flowers and trees and nature. The algorithm doesn't instantly change. It usually takes a few days, sometimes a week, depending on how much you're feeding the algorithm. If you're only on social media for 5 minutes every 6 days, it's going to take a long time for that feed to change. It'll take a while for the algorithm to catch up and realize that, it'll keep showing you the old stuff. Saying, hey, this really got your attention before. Don't you want to see more of it? Come on, click on it. You know you want to. But if you consciously make that decision of, no, I'm going to change what's showing up in my social media by picking happy, bright things, then over time, the algorithm figures out, this is what they really want now. This is what they want now. And it will start to show you more of the happy, bright stuff. And guess what? Our mind, our brain, works the same way. When we're physically out walking around, interacting with this world, there's an algorithm at play. There's a way that you have programmed your own mind to filter your experience. And these filters, in most cases, were developed in a very unconscious way. They were given to us by people that we trusted, caregivers, educational systems, television, movies, things that created usually a strong emotional reaction in us. Those get programmed with a certain emphasis. Things that triggered our curiosity. But mostly the things that get embedded most deeply, the filters that are most deeply implanted, are the ones that are based on our survival. The things that make us feel safe. So when we're out interacting with the world, we have this filter going on, looking for danger. So we see all the potential horrific things in life. We see, a car driving down the street, and we immediately classify that, danger, car there. But we have this wonderful ability to reprogram our mind. We can reprogram the algorithm of our personal life in the same way that we reprogram the algorithm on our social media. And that means we consciously select bright and beautiful things to pay attention to. So it doesn't mean that we throw out all the things that keep us safe. We don't pretend that the car is not racing down the street, but we create a context for it. We realize that, oh, car's coming down the street, I'm not going to cross right now. Maybe I'll stay on the sidewalk for a little while. And wow, how wonderful that there is a sidewalk, that there is space for me to walk. And I can be supported as I journey down the street, and I don't have to worry about the car racing down the street. I'm still aware of it peripherally, but what becomes primary attention can start to be very happy, bright, beautiful. And in doing so, our mind will begin to automatically select for our attention. It will start to feed our attention other things that are bright and beautiful. Like, I remember you, Jyoti, a long time ago when you first started practice. You'd lived in San Diego for many, many years. And then he came in with his friend, and they had just started practicing, and they were just overwhelmed by the beauty of these jacaranda trees. These purplely flowering trees that bloom every year. There's this just spectacular display of flowers. But because of the algorithm that he'd been using, never noticed them. They just didn't exist. And then as he started to practice and say, oh, you know what? I'm going to notice the beautiful things in this world and add that to my experience. And then all of a sudden, those trees became prominent in the attention field. And they create this feeling of beauty and expansion and joy. So as you live your life, check in and see, is the algorithm of your life working the way that you want it to? Or are you running on old programming? Are you getting caught up in things that are heavy and not productive and that are making you feel like you're just spinning your wheels and nothing's happening? Those are all very popular. Are you getting caught up in fear? Probably the two biggest algorithm drivers that we deal with in this world are fear and desire, which are really the same. Fear is desire. It's just the negative side. This whole attraction aversion system that we've been programmed with. And again, that it comes from this need for survival. So don't feel like it's a bad thing. Like, oh, I shouldn't be caught in this fear. This shouldn't be caught in this desire and this attraction aversion thing. It's just wrong, because it's not. It's part of life. It's a biological imperative. And I think if we try to distance ourselves in a way that we think that it's wrong, then we're embracing denial. We're basically going into spiritual bypassing by pretending that this part of us isn't existing when it does. It's, like I said, it's a biological imperative. If you hold your breath, eventually you're going to have to breathe. So instead of going into denial, what you can do is start to tweak it a little bit. So we're programmed biologically with this idea of staying safe. But if we really examine that idea, no one's safe. There's no such thing as safe. Because as soon as this body was born, it started to mature and decay, and then there'll be death. And that is the cycle of life, and there's no avoiding it. So this idea of being safe, I think, stems from our innate knowledge that there is something eternal. There is this endless light out of which everything arises. And we know that's there. But we can't take our personality and be that. But what we can do, how we can kind of tweak the programming, is instead to look for support. What will support this body to the best of its ability? What will be supportive for life in general? What is supportive of beauty and joy? What is supportive of my practice? So in this way, we start to kind of skirt that line of being in that attraction, aversion, wanting to be safe. Because we're not discounting that innate desire of wanting to be safe, but we're transforming it into a desire for support. And support is actually attainable. We can create for ourselves a supportive environment. So we can drop all the rocks we want and we'll never be safe. And people try. They create whole wars, and they stake out territory, and they build walls and castles and moats and protective structures in this quest to be safe. And in doing so, they wind up alienating themselves from the rest of creation. But instead, we can pick a different route, where we can take that same biological imperative and tweak it, and instead focus the attention on support. So when you feel that fear algorithm starting to run, check in with yourself and say, okay, I'm feeling the fear. What do I need to feel supported as I experience this fear? And see what that does to your algorithm. If you stick with it, if you keep feeding that algorithm attention on support, then the same thing happens with the cat videos that you keep clicking on. You'll get more of it. You'll start to notice all the ways that life is supporting you, even though it might not be the way that you expected it, even though you might not feel safe. There's that fear factor. But even through that discomfort, there's this sense of support that happens. And it's fascinating. And it allows us to start to move beyond the endless cycles of getting caught, of being trapped in the whirlpool and wanting to be in the doldrums, and being in the doldrums and wanting to be in the whirlpool. It ends that game, because now instead we're acknowledging and fully accepting that, oh, this is what's happening now, So let me look and be aware of how I'm being supported and how life is leading me into deeper life. So play with your algorithm. And don't ever be afraid to keep tweaking it. It's a living, changing, growing thing, this programming in our mind. So if your life is not how you want it to be, take a few minutes to contemplate and say, honestly, what have I been focusing on? Where am I putting my attention? What am I feeding? And be honest. Honesty is key. Not so you can beat yourself up and self-flagellate. If you do that, then notice, like, oh, I'm beating myself up for focusing on beating myself up. Instead, look at what's happening and say, okay, this is what I'm doing, so what can I focus on that would be brighter and happier? And you start to do that little by little. And you'll still get the old feed, you'll still get the old stuff coming up in your face over and over again, because the algorithms just wants to be sure. It's like, hey, you clicked on all this really nasty, horrific stuff before. You seem to really like to engage with it, so here it is again, just in case. But you just scroll by it. Scroll by it. But acknowledge it in that it is coming up, but how we interact with it. Pay attention to what you're feeding your attention to. So let's meditate some more. Or did you guys have any questions on that, or have any comments? Okay, we'll meditate. So one of the fastest ways to reprogram the algorithm of life is through prayer. And prayer is something I don't refer to very often because it's such an emotionally charged word. But prayer is programming. So don't take prayer as just pulling off out of a book or what somebody else said and just using that on blind faith. Use prayer consciously. Actually develop your own. Because as I said, prayer is programming. Words are magic. They are how we are shaping our view of reality. So one that I made up that I use is, I change it every so often, so let me get it right, is, may my thoughts arise from love, may my words arise from compassion, may my actions arise from wisdom. So that's just one example of a Buddhist prayer. Now, it's very, especially in this country, prayer is such an emotionally charged word because it, I think, has been misused as a way to just ask for things without doing any work to get them. And if we think of it from the Buddhist perspective, it's a ridiculous thing to do because we all are, and everything is, the light of God. It's, we are all that is. So if we're saying, oh, please God, give me this thing, and it's like, you're going to answer yourself, okay, yes, I can have it. But what most people do is on that second part is they say no. And so they just keep in this weird game of asking themselves for this thing where this other part of themselves keeps saying no. And we just trap ourselves in this horrible cycle. So don't do that, please. Instead, use prayer consciously. This one I shared that Satori sent out in the Dose of Light recently, and it's one that actually I based on something that Ekajati had shared with me, but it's one that I do almost every morning. It's, I say as I'm making my breakfast and brewing my cacao, I say thank you to all who have made today's nourishment possible. May it strengthen my body so I may be of service to all being. And I just don't say it to recite it. As I say it, I really contemplate what that actually means. So as I'm thanking everyone and everything that has made all of today's nourishment possible. And nourishment is not just food, but sunlight, water, the food, the people that made the food, the plants and animals that created the food, that made the food possible, everything. The trucks, the store, the money that was created, the whole economic system that allowed me to have cereal this morning. There's just such deep gratitude for all of that. And in this contemplation, in this little prayer, it's programming my mind to see the interdependence of everything that's arising. So it's powerful. So develop your own prayers, develop your own way of reprogramming your algorithm, and see where it takes you.